What's going on, everyone? We're here at TD Garden with Judd Sirott right now, and we're going to take a stroll around the garden and get to know Judd on this momentous day. Judd, how excited are you to be the new voice of the Bruins?
I am honored, humbled, privileged to have this opportunity to do the Boston Bruins, be a part of this community, work with Andy Brickley and the crew over at NESN. This was a dream I had when I was 14 to get to the National Hockey League, and this has exceeded anything I ever dreamt.
Amazing. What were you doing before this opportunity?
I was doing the Bruins on radio for 7 years, working with Bob Beers, and what a privilege it was to be a part of the family at 98.5 The Sports Hub. We had a blast together, and I was so fortunate to get a chance to work there and work with so many great people, notably my old partner, Bob Beers.
And how did you get your first job in sports?
Wow. Well, full time, let's go back. It was right after college. Sports radio was just starting around the United States, and I was fortunate enough to help start the All Sports station in Chicago, which is where I'm from originally. Myself, Mike Greenberg, who's now on ESPN, the host of Get Up, we all started together back in 1992 full time as I was an executive producer and then later became a host, an anchor, a reporter. That was really my first full-time gig in the world of sports media.
Wow, shout out Greeny. What is something people don't know about you?
Ooh, well, huge music fan. I know a lot of guys on the traveling crew, Brick, Z, Beersy, big country music fans. I like all sorts of music, country, rock, love blues, but I don't know if a lot of people know that I grew up as a headbanger. I love old school heavy metal. Metallica was always a favorite, but there are a few others that would be in the mix.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up just outside of Chicago in a town called Arlington Heights, which is about a 45-minute drive northwest of the city.
Sox, Celts, or Pats?
I was always a baseball guy. I played baseball throughout high school. I played some other sports too, but Red Sox for me.
What favorite hockey player of all time?
Oh, that's an easy one. So when I grew up in Chicago and a friend of mine introduced me to the sport and introduced me to the National Hockey League for the first time, I got a chance to see number 18, a guy named Dennis Savard. And he and Wayne Gretzky played during the same era. And Gretz obviously was much more prolific as a scorer, but Savvy was the most electrifying player of his era.
Where did you go to college?
I went to the University of Michigan. Go Blue, baby.
Can you sing the Michigan fight song?
Oh my God, if we sing, I'm gonna break the camera. I don't think you want me to sing, but yes, I can do it. Hail to the victors, valiant. Hail to the conquering heroes, hail, hail. To Michigan, the leaders and best. Hail to the victors, valiant, hail. To the conquering heroes, hail, hail. To Michigan, the champions of the West. Go Blue, baby, a shout out to the national champs.
Did you know when you were in college that you wanted to cover sports?
Well, I know that this is what I wanted to do. You know, from the moment that I saw, we talked about Dennis Savard, from the moment that I saw Savvy play and I heard Pat Foley do games, and I was already a huge sports junkie, that I was fortunate enough to know what I wanted to do. But to get from there to here, that it took a lot of time. But I tell you what, I valued every single day of that journey.
What was your major?
So I wasn't sure if this career was going to work. So my dad was an attorney, and I thought if I had a philosophy degree, it would be a good entree for me to go to law school. I did actually apply to law school, got into a few, but as things started to progress after college, I got some opportunities, and ultimately I was able to make my way into the National Hockey League. But I remember, since you bring it up, and the major philosophy, like I think I told my host when I was an executive producer, he asked me, hey, you know, what's your degree and what'd you major in? I said philosophy. He said, take cab number 5.
What's your favorite hobby?
Hobby, without question, skiing, easy. Jack Edwards and I, we shared that. We hit it off immediately. I remember the first game when I jumped on the charter with the Bruins. I had a ski magazine with me. Jack saw it, and he pulled out a cocktail napkin from the charter flight, and he drew me a map of New England and where every single ski resort was.
How did you meet your wife?
Well, that's a long story, but to try and shorten it, we have a mutual friend who invited me to lunch to try and set me up with one of her other friends. But at the time, I noticed this redhead with this fabulous laugh and this infectious smile, and I asked for her number right after.
How many kids do you have?
I got two, both in high school. Listen, they are great kids. They work hard. Both are working here this summer. They're good people. My wife and I are really proud of both of them. They are great kids.
Who was your first player autograph?
I was never really an autograph guy. I think the first guy that comes to mind, my dad must have had, I think he represented a car dealership and they were doing an autograph signing, and there were a couple of Cubs that were going to the autograph signing at the car dealership. And Brick could appreciate this. I got an autograph from a guy named Bobby Mercer. Mercer was a right fielder for the Cubs on some really bad teams in the late 70s.
What was your favorite game you ever called?
Ooh, see, that's really hard. I think anytime I'm calling a Stanley Cup playoff game, those are always some of the best. But at the same time, there are a few games, and I can think of a few in particular since I've been here with the Bruins and calling games for the Bruins that really stand out. I've been fortunate enough, a couple of years ago, we did the Bruins and Penguins outdoors at Fenway Park. Jake DeBrusk, 2 goals, scored late. The Bruins coming from behind in front of that crowd. He had a busted hand and a busted leg that we found out later. That was a fabulous win. The other game that will never ever be repeated, and it came right after the pandemic, the Bruins played an outdoor game on the shores of Lake Tahoe. It was spectacular against the Philadelphia Flyers. To see that sapphire blue lake and to see the Sierras in the background and the sun going down, and the Bruins torched the Philadelphia Flyers that night. That game will never, ever be repeated.
Awesome. What's your go-to game day snack?
Always a junk food guy growing up. I've tried to curtail that a little bit, but if pretzels are around, it's going to be pretzels.
What do you think the best moment in Boston sports history is?
I walked by it on my way in. Mother's Day, 1970. Bobby Orr, the most iconic goal in National Hockey League history to win the Stanley Cup for the Bruins over the St. Louis Blues.
What will be your biggest adjustment from going from radio to TV?
Well, I think a couple of things come to mind. On radio, we've got to paint the picture. On television, you've got the picture. So my job is to try and augment the picture that you're seeing in front of you. And then the other part of it is, TV's a bigger undertaking than radio is. So I'm working alongside Brick, Brian Zaccello, the producer in the truck, Rose, the director, the audio people, graphics, etc. It's a collaborative sport television. So our job, my job, is to try and bring all of that stuff together.
How do you prep for a game day?
Ooh. Most games are pretty much the same. If it's a 7 o'clock night game, I'll usually start around 7 to 7:30 in the morning. I'll try and digest the articles, the stats, the stories, make sure that I've watched a couple of games of the team that the Bruins are playing against, so I know immediately who these players are, their names, numbers, etc. Then after that, going to the morning skate to see who's in, who's out, who's playing with whom. But I think one of the most important things for me is I have a chance after that to step into the room and get a chance to talk with players and coaches so I can get some stories that I can hopefully bring to the air. And it might not necessarily be for that game that night, but I've got it and I've got it in my notes. From there, head home, grab some lunch, and then study and try and prepare and make sure that this is all in my head and ready to go. I'm an early guy, I always have been. So if the Bruins, let's say we're on the road, there are usually 2 buses. There's the early bus and there's, I guess we'll call it the later bus. I'm always on the early bus with the captain, Brad Marchand, and the rest of the crew. So I like to get there 2.5 hours before face-off, no matter when the game time is.
What would be your walk-up song?
Well, since we mentioned heavy metal, we mentioned Metallica, Seek and destroy.
Okay, we're cheating now, but last and final 20-second question. Why is this the best franchise in hockey?
Not only Original Six, but this is the oldest American franchise in the National Hockey League. And you're talking about a team that they are woven into the fabric of Boston and the community in New England. But for me, it's about the people. And if you go to a game at TD Garden, if you go to a Bruins game on the road, you can see it, you can hear it, you can feel it. And that's what makes this job unrivaled around the National Hockey League.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Judd. Looking forward to hearing your voice this season.
Thank you.